All right, let's talk about a problem that every single system administrator knows, really knows. Managing access permissions. It feels like a constant battle, right? And even when you're being super careful, things just get messy. And that mess can create some serious risks.
If you've ever managed permissions, whether it's in Microsoft Entra ID or really any complex system, you've definitely had that moment where you're staring at a user's access list and you just find yourself asking one very specific question. We've all been there, right? You followed all the procedures, you were careful with provisioning, you tried to stick to the principle of least privilege. But then, a few months down the line, you discover users with all this access they don't need anymore, creating these security holes that just seem to pop up out of nowhere. Well, here's the good news. You're not doing it wrong. You're just running into a natural law of IT.
So here's the crucial thing we have to get our heads around. We tend to think of our access control systems as these static, rigid structures that we build and then just maintain. But honestly, that's a total myth. The reality is, they're more like living, breathing ecosystems.
See, access isn't this fixed thing. It's constantly changing, and it actually grows with every single normal business activity. A new project, a new hire, all of it adds access. So access growth isn't a sign you failed. It's a byproduct of a healthy, productive company that's actually getting stuff done. The problem isn't the growth itself. It's how we manage its life cycle.
And what's driving all this growth? Well, it's just normal, everyday business. You've got people joining the company, people moving between departments, and of course, people leaving. Then you have new projects constantly spinning up, and each one needs its own special set of permissions. And let's not forget my personal favorite, those endless, one-off, temporary exceptions for a quick little task that get granted, but then somehow forgotten about. Every single one of these things adds another layer.
I love this analogy because it really helps shift your mindset. Imagine you have a garden. If you just left it alone for a month, you wouldn't be surprised to find it full of weeds, would you? You wouldn't call yourself a failed gardener. You just say, well, that's nature. Access control is exactly the same. Without regular, proactive weeding, it's just going to get overgrown. It's what it does.
Okay, so if granting access is natural and expected, where does the real danger actually come from? Well, it comes from the gaps in the identity lifecycle. It's not so much about what you give, but it's all about what you forget to take away.
So many people, and it's a totally understandable assumption, think that access sprawl, that big tangled mess of permissions, is because somebody messed up or was negligent, but that's almost never the real story. The real culprit is usually systemic. We're fantastic at the granting access part of the lifecycle. It's the revoking access part that just often falls through the cracks.
And hey, this isn't just my opinion. Security experts see this all the time. As CyberCX points out here, that deprovisioning step, removing the access, is the one that most frequently gets forgotten. A user gets added to a group for an exception, and that's it. That all-important second step of taking them out later, it just never happens.
And just look at the sheer complexity of a modern cloud environment. You've got organizations, folders, projects, resources, all inheriting policies from each other. A single forgotten permission from a year ago can stay active, buried deep inside this hierarchy, creating this silent but very real risk. So let's give this whole thing a name. It's called access entropy. It's just like in physics, right? Where systems naturally move towards a state of disorder, well, access permissions do the same thing. They just naturally accumulate and get disorganized over time unless you are actively applying energy, in our case, governance, to keep them tidy.
Okay, so if this growth is just going to happen, how in the world do we manage it? The goal isn't to stop growth. That would mean the business isn't doing anything. The goal is to build a better system to handle it. So let's go through 3 simple rules that can give us a new mental model for control.
The first rule is a big one, and it kind of flips the whole traditional model on its head. Instead of granting access that's permanent until you revoke it, what if we granted access that's temporary by default? This is a key part of any zero-trust strategy. Access for a project or a special task should have a built-in expiration date. If someone still needs it, fine, they can renew it. But it doesn't just hang around forever by default.
Okay, rule number 2. We have to stop mixing long-term access with short-term access. What a person needs to do for their main job is totally different from what they need for a 6-week project. So they should be managed differently, with different life cycles.
This diagram here shows the idea perfectly. Think of a user's main job as their role. That's pretty stable. But for a specific project, they get a temporary binding to a whole different set of permissions. The key is that this binding is tied to the project,
not to the person. So when the project is over, the binding goes away, and it doesn't mess with their core role at all.
And finally, rule number 3. Access reviews cannot be something we only do after there's been a security incident. That's way too late. They need to be a totally normal, standard operational procedure, just like patching your servers or checking your backups. These regular, automated reviews are the weeding that keeps our permissions garden clean and secure.
All right, let's make all this a bit more concrete with a scenario that I guarantee has happened in your organization in one way or another. Let's follow the journey of a single forgotten permission.
So here's Alex. In Q1, Alex joins marketing. Everything's perfect, standard role-based access. Then in Q2, Alex joins a big new initiative, Project Phoenix, and gets added to the Phoenix admins group for some special access. Still totally normal. But then in Q4, Alex moves to the sales team, and this is where the failure happens. Alex gets the new sales permissions, absolutely, but nobody ever goes back and removes the old project permissions. Fast forward a year, Project Phoenix is long dead, but that Phoenix admins group and Alex's membership in it, they're still there. 2 years later, that forgotten permission is a ticking time bomb, an access path that has no business existing, just waiting to be exploited. And notice, every step here was a normal business activity. No single person made some giant mistake. The failure was in the process, in the lifecycle management.
So really, the key takeaway here is that managing access isn't about trying to stop growth. It's about building smart processes to manage its natural life cycle. It's about having control, not about assigning blame. So with that in mind, let's turn this back to your world. Seriously, think about it. For you, is the biggest challenge the mover scenario like we saw with Alex? Or is it just the sheer number of temporary projects that leave behind this trail of old, stale permissions? Knowing where your garden tends to get the most overgrown is the very first step to coming up with a much better weeding strategy. Thanks so much for tuning in.